It is natural to assume that the birth of a child will always be accompanied by joy and wonder. The arrival of a new life typically fills the room with excitement, hope, and the boundless potential of what the future may hold. However, for Lindsay and Andrew Jackson, the birth of their third child was far from the idyllic moment they had anticipated. As they gazed upon their newborn daughter for the first time, a wave of shock washed over them. Their tiny, delicate girl had entered the world with a massive, unusual black mark covering a significant portion of her face. What should have been a moment of pure joy became one of stunned silence as they grappled with a mixture of emotions they hadn't expected. Lindsay's heart sank, her joy tainted by worry. Andrew, standing by her side, felt an unfamiliar sense of fear clutch at him, something he had never experienced during the births of their two sons. Both were left speechless, their thoughts swirling as they tried to process what this mark could mean. Was their daughter healthy? Would this mysterious mark affect her life in ways they couldn't yet imagine? The weight of these unspoken questions hung in the air as the medical staff bustled around them, assuring the couple that their baby girl was otherwise in good health. But the shock lingered. Before this moment, the Jackson family had led what anyone might describe as a perfectly typical life, void of any extraordinary or unsettling events. Lindsay and Andrew were a classic love story, two people who had met, fallen for each other, and decided to build a life together. Their relationship was solid, built on mutual respect, love, and shared dreams. They had worked hard to make ends meet, holding down steady jobs that, while not glamorous, provided enough income to purchase a modest yet comfortable home. It wasn't extravagant by any means, but it was theirs, a symbol of their stability and the life they had built together. Their lives were filled with the usual ups and downs of daily existence, but nothing too dramatic or unexpected had ever shaken their world before. Lindsay and Andrew's circle consisted of supportive family members and close friends who lived similarly ordinary lives. They enjoyed occasional dinners and weekends out, socializing with the same tight-knit group. Their relationships were steady, uncomplicated, and filled with the normalcy of shared laughter and minor conflicts. Their days, like so many others, were spent navigating the delicate balance between work, parenting, and trying to carve out a little time for themselves. And although there was nothing unusual about the Jackson family, that in itself was their charm. They were relatable, familiar, the kind of couple you'd wave to at the end of your driveway or chat with during a school fundraiser. The Jackson family had been married for what felt like a lifetime, with years that had passed both quickly and slowly, marked by milestones of ordinary family life. Their union had blessed them with two wonderful sons, Sam and Mark, who were born a few years apart. Mark, the elder at 8 years old, was a curious and intelligent boy, while 6-year-old Sam had a quiet wisdom that belied his age. Together, they made a lively pair, filling the house with the usual energy of young children. Lindsay and Andrew poured their hearts into raising them, doing everything within their means to provide them with the love, security, and opportunities every parent dreams of giving their children. Yet, for all their efforts, they maintained a healthy balance. Their love for their boys was unwavering, but they never spoiled them. Mark and Sam were grounded kids, shaped by their parents' gentle but firm guidance. They understood that life had its limits and that they couldn't always get what they wanted, Still, they were happy. Well-behaved boys who cherished the simple pleasures of childhood, building forts in the living room, riding bikes in the neighborhood, and spending long, lazy afternoons at the local park. To describe the Jackson family as ordinary almost felt like an understatement. They were, in every sense, the embodiment of the everyday struggles, joys, and moments of calm that most families experience. This isn't to suggest that their lives were dull or void of excitement, far from it. Rather, their normalcy was a reflection of the human condition. They faced the same small hurdles as any other family. Some days, they managed to breeze through without a hitch, while others left them feeling completely overwhelmed. They had days where they felt in sync, joyfully spending time together, and days where the need for personal space became all too apparent. But this was the rhythm of their lives, sometimes harmonious, sometimes dissonant, yet always moving forward. They were the kind of family that would spend a Saturday afternoon working on a puzzle together, only to find themselves bickering over missing pieces, only to laugh at the absurdity of it all moments later. They fought. They made up. They laughed. They cried. They experienced the highs and lows of life, just like every other family across the world. Now, however, things were different. As they held their newborn daughter, her innocent face marked by a symbol they didn't understand, Lindsay and Andrew found themselves standing on unfamiliar ground. Their ordinary life had suddenly taken a turn they hadn't expected. And as they looked down at their daughter's face, they realized they had entered a new chapter, one that would test their resilience, their love, and their ability to adapt to the unknown. However, one day, something that was not typical occurred. Something that deviated from their typical lifestyles and put them into a state of disarray. The news that Lindsay was expecting a child was revealed. Did it come as a surprise? Even while this is true, the couple would be lying if they claimed that they were not even a tiny bit pleased about the possibility of having another kid. There is no doubt that it was a satisfying and gratifying experience. But being pregnant is never a walk in the park. There is always a degree of danger involved in any situation. In order to protect the health of their unborn kid, Lindsay began adopting a lifestyle that would be best for them. When Lindsay would ordinarily have a burger, she began to substitute a salad for it. This was the beginning of her improved eating habits. Water and fruit juices became her go-to beverages in place of the beverages that she would regularly consume, such as caffeine or even alcohol. And when she would ordinarily spend the evenings slouching around in front of the television, she started working out every day in order to maintain her physical fitness. She was aware that if she took care of herself, the baby would be born healthy and robust without any complications. From the moment they arrived at their initial scan, the physician appeared to be quite pleased with what they observed. At first glance, it appeared as though the infant was in good health and developing in the appropriate manner. The amount of fingers and toes on its body was appropriate, and it had a charming tiny face. The most significant piece of information, however, was that the baby was, in fact, a girl. Both Lindsay and Andrew were ecstatic with the news, in spite of the fact that they hadn't even given any attention to the question of what gender they wanted the baby to be. They knew that having a little girl would complete their ideal little family. They broke the news to Mark and Sam as they were about to return home. They did not have a very positive attitude toward their parents. After all, What young males would want a younger sister to play with anyway? Despite this, they continued to be happy and eagerly anticipated the arrival of the Jackson family's newest addition despite their disappointment. On the other hand, would the delivery proceed as smoothly as the pregnancy did? On the other hand, was there a surprise that Lindsay and Andrew did not anticipate when their daughter was born? Continue to watch to find out how the events of this story play out. In the end, it turned out that Lindsay had a very easy time carrying the pregnancy to term. Keep in mind that she had already been pregnant and delivered 2 babies in the past, so she was aware of what to anticipate. After what seemed like an eternity, the moment had finally arrived, and she and Andrew suddenly found themselves in the maternity department of the hospital. After immediately leaving the boys at their grandparents' house, they hurried to their destination, where they were prepared for the arrival of their very first girl. With anticipation and excitement, they were both looking forward to finally seeing the little girl that had been developing inside of Lindsay for the past 9 months. And at this point, the time had finally arrived for them. Lindsay began to exert herself, and the medical professionals assisted in the delivery of the pregnancy. You can never be completely ready for the discomfort and unusual sensations that come along with giving birth. Regardless of how many times you have gone through the actual process of giving birth. On the other hand, Lindsay fought through it like a champion, holding Andrew's hand securely throughout the entire ordeal. At long last, the head began to materialize, and everything began to take on a profoundly real quality. All of the details, including the name, had been decided upon. Louise. This is the name that they would choose for their young child. However, as soon as the baby was extracted from Lindsay's body, they became aware that something was not quite right. On one side of Louise's face, there was a distinct dark mark that was rather enormous. It stood out and was not appealing to the eye. At first, the parents believed that it was something that occurred during the process of giving birth. But, following closer study, they discovered that it was actually a significant mark on the skin of the infant. Even if the child was healthy and doing well, the fact that Louise was, for lack of a better word, malformed did not change the fact that the child was healthy and otherwise well. The emotional state of Lindsay and Andrew began to deteriorate. What were the chances that this dream would turn into a nightmare? Congenital nevus melanocytes was the condition that Louise was suffering from, according to the explanation provided by the physician. This is the condition in which a child is born with benign skin lesions that can range in size from extremely small to abnormally huge. It was unfortunate to observe that Louise's appeared to be on the larger side. In addition to the fact that the skin lesion becomes more obvious as it becomes larger, there is also an increased likelihood that it will develop some form of cancer of some kind. If Lindsay and Andrew wanted to make sure that their daughter did not experience any changes or problems throughout her entire life, they would have to keep a close eye on her. The doctor continued by explaining that the girl would most likely end up with skin that was drier and flakier in the area, and that although it was unattractive, it would most likely be fine in the long run. The fact is that Lindsay and Andrew were taken aback by the news. The parents were perplexed and asked the physician why the problem wasn't detected during the scans. The physician responded with a straightforward explanation. This kind of event is not only not picked up by the scans, but even if the scans did identify it, the doctors and other medical professionals would not have searched for it, due to the fact that congenital nevus melanocytes are only seen in 1 out of every 20 newborns. There is very little to no need for medical professionals to keep an eye out for it or anticipate seeing it. During the time that they were being transported back to the maternity unit, Lindsay and Andrew glanced at Louise with a peculiar sense of terror that was becoming increasingly prevalent and taking over their happiness. Lindsay and Andrew were able to pick up on murmurings coming from the other mothers who were there in the maternity unit that evening. During their conversation, they were discussing how awful the black mark was and how they would never be able to provide care for a child who was as ugly and deformed as Louise. As they gossiped, pointed, and even laughed at the poor little infant and her appearance, they hardly hushed their voices. They were upset about the baby's appearance. It was impossible for Lindsay or Andrew to deny that the conversation had an effect on them. It was painful for them. But what options did they have? Would it be possible for them to bring up such an odd and unique child? Despite the fact that it took them several long days, the parents eventually came to a conclusion. It would be an excellent one. Or it would be a poor one. As it turned out, Lindsay and Andrew came to the conclusion that they would feel love for her regardless of the circumstances. In the end, Louise was a helpless young girl who had no ability to defend herself. She had not committed any wrongdoing. It was simply a peculiar mark on her face that she was born with. The outward appearance of their young daughter was irrelevant to them because they believed that it would not have any impact on the kind of person she would become as she got older. When they picked up their young daughter, they did so with pride. And they pledged that they would never let her down again. When they were leaving the hospital with Louise, they did so with their heads held high because they were overcome with pride for their daughter. It made no difference what the other mothers thought or said about the situation. Thankfully, Louise went on to become a happy and healthy young girl. Despite the fact that she had a facial mark that was very visible and evident, her relatives and friends were able to accept her in her current state of being. The fact that Lindsay and Andrew were so protective of her is undeniable. After all, what parent isn't in a protective position toward their offspring? It doesn't matter how different Louise may have appeared on the exterior. What matters is what's on the inside. This is the point. And on the inside, Louise was developing into a young girl who was not only brave and self-assured beyond all measure, but also kind and well-adjusted. The mark on Louise's face, though impossible to ignore, was never large enough to obscure the beauty of her heart, which overflowed with love and warmth. It was precisely this boundless love that endeared her to Lindsay, Andrew, Mark, and Sam in ways that went beyond appearances. To them, Louise's spirit shone far brighter than any visible imperfection could ever dim. Her smile, her laughter, and her gentle nature filled their home with joy. And no external mark could ever diminish the love they felt for her. For the Jackson family, Louise was perfect just as she was. Her heart a source of light that radiated through every room and every moment of their lives together. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.